Welcome to Front Office Pros, brought to you by the Front Office Pros, Steve and Joe. The NFL season is less than 2 months away, and today we're going to be starting our divisional breakdown series beginning with the AFC East. With us today for the AFC East Breakdown is a special guest making his first appearance on Front Office Pros, which is none other than Ryan Talbot. Ryan is a Buffalo Bills writer for New York Upstate, Syracuse.com, Buffalo Bills News, and a co-host of The Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. Ryan, thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Excited to talk AFC East football.
Most definitely.
Hike!
All right, so last season, guys, the AFC East standings was as follows. So the Bills were the AFC East Division champions. They went 13-3. The Miami Dolphins went 9-8, and they made the wild card. And then the Patriots and Jets both missed the playoffs. Patriots were 8-9, and the Jets were 7-10. So based on what has happened this offseason, what is your guys' prediction on who will be the AFC East Division Championship for the upcoming season?
Yeah, so for me, I still have the Buffalo Bills winning this division. Listen, the AFC East has never been tougher. You look at what the Jets did, bringing in Aaron Rodgers, giving that team a legitimate quarterback. They already have a great defense in place. They're going to be a contender in this division this year. And then, I still think the Dolphins are the biggest threat to the Bills in the division. I love the fact that they brought over Jalen Ramsey. I didn't think it was his greatest season last year with the Rams. But the reason I like that signing so much is because they also brought over Vic Fangio. And I think Fangio is really going to shore up a lot of things on that defense. We know how good the offense can be if Tua can stay healthy. So I think they're going to be a real threat. But when it comes to the Bills, people are kind of writing this team off. I don't know if it's the way that the season ended in Cincinnati. I don't know if it's because they didn't make as many splash moves, I should say, in free agency in the draft. But I like what this team did. They brought in a legitimate pass-catching weapon in Dalton Kincaid in the first round. They really shored up their offensive line this offseason via free agency and the draft with Osiris Torrance in round 2. But a lot of free agent additions that I really like, Connor McGovern being the big name signing there. The interior of that line is going to be a lot more solid for Josh Allen and company. And I don't think they're going to be a run-first team by any stretch of the imagination, but they also really improved their running game. You already have James Cook. You have Naheem Hines, who has a year in the system now, half a year, whatever you want to say. He has more knowledge of the system. Damian Harris is going to be that short yardage bruising back. And that's not all. I mean, they have so many guys. They have a solid 1 through 4 in that running back room that they could potentially keep here for the foreseeable future. So I like the offense. Defense only got better on the D-line. Leonard Floyd was a late signing that I really like, 9 sacks a year ago. Poona Ford is going to enhance the middle of that defense, where I thought they were really good last year when healthy on the interior in terms of stopping the run. But Poona Ford can do a little bit of everything for them. The biggest questions for this team are at linebacker, though, who replaces Tremaine Edmonds. I think they have some viable in-house candidates. And then that cornerback 2 job. I'm hoping that Kyrie Elam, 1 year after being a first-round pick, wins that job, but they have a lot of confidence in Christian Benford. They have a lot of confidence in Dane Jackson. And really, Edmonds is the only starter that's not going to be here from 1 year ago. So I really like everything on both sides of the ball for this team.
Yeah, for me, I was thinking about going elsewhere, but, I still got to have the Bills as the AFC East Division champ. You got to see it. Someone's got to take them off first and see somebody do it. So I'll roll with them. I was, considering taking Miami or the Jets to kind of overtake them, but while I do think this is was a really tough division and choice to go with the winner, but I'll give the edge to the Bills, and they do it again.
Yeah, I'm with both. There's consensus here between the three of us. I agree. I think the Bills are going to win the division. I do think it interesting, especially Ryan, you could probably attest to this, but the Bills really were not in the national spotlight for quite some time. People just didn't even talk about them. They would talk about the Cowboys, the Patriots, the Jets, whatever your usual teams. I think recently with this whole Diggs melodrama going on, and different sports heads saying like, oh, McDermott's a problem and they need to bring somebody else in. I agree. I think for whatever reason, whether it was the playoff game or the recent news, I think people are kind of thinking like, oh, the Bills might be on the decline. But like you said, I mean, all the additions you mentioned, I think, are huge. I think the Leonard Floyd addition is going to be really helpful because with Von Miller recovering, from that ACL tear, it sounds like he could be ready to go even week 1. I know he's mentioning that he's pushing for that, but we may not even need him to be with Floyd there. And we still have got, Greg Rousseau going into his 3rd year. I think he could really take a step forward. He missed a few games last year. And so, Von and Leonard Floyd really, really played well together when they were with the Rams for that Super Bowl win. So really like what that's going to look like for the defense side. And, like you said, I have similar, concerns or kind of like I wonder what's going to happen with the second cornerback spot and who's going to fill the middle linebacker spot for Tremaine Edmonds. On the offensive side, we didn't really lose that much. Really, I mean, you lost Isaiah McKenzie, and Devin Singletary, but I mean, you've got Damian Harris, and I think Dalton Kincaid, I think is really going to be used in that offense. A lot of 12 personnel coming up. So I really like what the Bills have going on. So, all right, guys, how about the wild card teams? Is there any wild card teams coming out of the AFC East this season?
Yeah, I have the Miami Dolphins being a wild card team again this season, back-to-back years. I like that offense. They just added more speed to it in the offseason. I feel like as long as Tua stays healthy, this is a double-digit team, or win team, I should say. I already mentioned why I like the Vic Fangio signing for the defense. I think that they're going to be neck and neck with the Bills for a good portion of this season. As they were last year for a time before they kind of fell off. Once Tua got hurt, they lost a lot of close games. They kind of fell off at the end, going like you mentioned, with 9 wins at the end of things. So I think as long as he stays healthy, they're in the mix for the wild card. I have the Jets missing the playoffs. I think they're going to be better. There's no doubt about it. Aaron Rodgers greatly lifts up that offense. The defense was really good statistically. But you look at a lot of those wins last year. They had a 31-30 win over Jacoby Brissett and the Browns. They had a win over Brett Ripken and the Broncos. They had a win over Mitch Trubisky starting in that game against the Steelers. Skylar Thompson won game for the Miami Dolphins. They beat up on a lot of quarterbacks that they were supposed to beat up on. But when push came to shove, there were some games that did not go their way. I'm not sold on this front office, this coaching staff. I think that last year's great draft had more to do with players falling into their lap than anything else. Sauce Gardner was a no-brainer with their first pick. Garrett Wilson was a no-brainer with that second first-round pick. Those are picks that any one of us would have made at that point in time. You maybe would have said Olave instead of Garrett Wilson, but you can't go wrong with either of those players, essentially is what I'm saying. So before that, though, they've had a lot of draft classes that kind of have missed. So I have them on the precipice of making the playoffs, but just missing out.
Yeah, for me, I got one wild card team, and I'm going with the Jets. The Jets are the wild card team for me. I really like their defense. They played really well last year, and they won games with really bad quarterback play. They were a quarterback away. Now Rodgers comes in, with the weapons, having a young guy like Garrett Wilson, the run game with Breece Hall that they have potentially, and, mixing a few other backs in the passing game as well. But I just like, for me, they were really competitive last year with really bad quarterback play. With Rodgers, I think they're a playoff team now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had a really hard time figuring out who was going to get the wild card just in the AFC in general. It's a gauntlet as to who's actually, because there's the teams that are going to miss that really are deserving of, from a football roster standpoint, as one of the best teams in the NFL. But I also went with the Jets as my only wild card team. They went on a 6-game losing streak to end the season. Really played a quarterback roulette last year. I guess the best thing that they did was when Mike White was the quarterback. So I think with Aaron Rodgers coming in, it does create more stability, for that offense. And that defense is a stout, really stout defense. So I think if they just get, like you said, Joe, just a quarterback away, I think could do wonders for them. I think, honestly, and who knows? I mean, people will say like, oh, how tough is the schedule? It was on paper based on last year, but we know that things change. But based on strength of schedule, the tiebreaker for me was the Jets' strength of schedule shows that it's much easier than the Dolphins. So I think as a result, I think it's going to be close. I think we're talking about like a margin of like 1 or 2 wins that could really change the tide of who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. So that's why I went with them. So Ryan, you already mentioned you have the Jets missing the playoffs, and then the Patriots. What order do you have those two?
Yeah, so I definitely have the Jets third in the division, Patriots last. And you guys mentioned it. It's the gauntlet of the AFC in terms of why I had the Jets just missing it. You look at the AFC North and you look, all 4 of those teams could potentially be playoff teams. I like what Baltimore did this offseason. I love, obviously, what the Cincinnati Bengals have built there. The Browns, in terms of roster alone, have one of the best rosters in this league. Now, we've seen that before. Sometimes roster talent doesn't always equal wins, but I would like to think they're going to be in the mix. And even Pittsburgh was playing some solid football during stretches last season with a rookie Kenny Pickett. So I like that entire division. Obviously, when you go to the West, you have Kansas City still. You have Denver, which I expect to be much better with Sean Payton. I think he's going to play to Russell Wilson's strengths. The Chargers are a legitimate team. I don't have high expectations for the Raiders, but 3 teams in that division are in the mix too. Jacksonville in their division running away with it, in my opinion. So, it's still a gauntlet, though. There's still so many teams, any given Sunday type of league, where I had the Jets missing, but it wasn't by much. So, yeah, definitely I have the Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots.
Yeah, for me, I got the Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, and same with you. The Dolphins, really close to being second in that, in a wild card team. But, in my book, I got them just missing.
Yeah, I have the same order as you, Joe. I go Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots. With the Dolphins, it's interesting. I really liked your point there, Ryan, when it comes to Vic Fangio. I wonder if also, they traded a first-round pick to get Bradley Chubb. I wonder if Vic Fangio would be able to unlock Bradley Chubb because obviously during his tenure in Denver, they were together. And, Jalen Ramsey had his best seasons with Evero as the defensive coordinator, and he's a disciple of the Fangio defense. So I can't see Ramsey really skipping a beat. And with him and Xavier Howard, you could argue that might be the best cornerback tandem in the league. So, yeah, the Dolphins are I really wanted to put them in, but like you said, Ryan, the AFC North is tough. The AFC West, with the Chargers, Broncos, and obviously the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. So it's really difficult. Real quick, what are your guys' thoughts on the Patriots? Everyone wants to talk about the Patriots. People are thinking that I not a lot, but people I think they want to make them a playoff team, but I definitely don't see it happening. What are your guys' thoughts there as far as the Patriots outlook?
I can't see their offense being worse than last season. I think that Bill O'Brien's going to make that offense a lot better than what it was. But again, that's not saying much for where they were one season ago. I like Stevenson a lot on that offense. I never trust in fantasy the running backs because, one week you have a great performance and the next week they're splitting it up 3 different ways. But I do like Stevenson. I like a lot of the talent on the defensive side of the ball. I expect Mac Jones to be better. This is a team that could hover around 500 for a good portion of the season. I just can't see them being in that same conversation, though, as the Bills, as the Dolphins, and as the Jets, just based on overall roster talent.
I'd agree with that. I don't think, they'll be as necessarily as bad as what people are putting out there. And, everyone thinks that, they're a dumpster fire, but Bill Belichick, you can say what you want. His record and stuff isn't as good as since Tom Brady left. Bill O'Brien's going to help Mac Jones in the offense. The thing of it is to really be in the playoff, you got to have double-digit wins, and I just don't see them getting the double-digit wins. I think they could win, 8 or 9 games, and that just won't put you in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that the AFC is one of, if not the most difficult division of football, which it wasn't that just so, years ago when Brady was winning it year after year, but how things changed. So transitioning over to our segment of fantasy football, our channel is dedicated to discuss fantasy football content. So we're going to be talking about the 2023 season. So guys, I want to ask you to give me a sleeper for each team. So we'll start off with the Bills. Who is your sleeper for the 2023 season?
Yeah, for the Bills, I think my sleeper will be Khalil Shakir out of this slot. I think they need somebody to emerge out of that slot role, be the third guy. I know they brought in Deontay Hardy, people like him as a sleeper, but I kind of like what Khalil Shakir started to do at the end of last year. And the slot position over the last years is a position that's garnered targets for the Bills over the last 4 years. I believe they average like 100 targets to that position. So I think he wins the training camp battle, and I think he's a potential sleeper.
Yeah, so the Bills did vacate a lot of receptions this offseason. You mentioned Isaiah McKenzie out of the mix, but there's Devin Singletary. There's guys, too, that were lower on the totem pole as well. They had 1 or 2 receptions here or there. So there's a lot of catches to go around. I guess I wouldn't qualify him as a sleeper, so I have 2 names, but I do want to mention I love Gabe Davis's ADP right now compared to where it was 1 year ago. I think that this is the year to kind of get in on Gabe Davis. He dealt with an ankle injury all season long. Expectations were just too high for him coming off of a 4-touchdown performance against the Chiefs. But when you look at his final stat line, he had about 50 catches, 800-plus yards, 7 touchdowns. That's still a quality fantasy line for someone that definitely was not going into drafts as a wide receiver 1, but you still had some top 12 finishes with him last year, 1 season ago. Still put up a respectable line if you had him as wide receiver 3, especially. But where he's going now, I like him a lot. But my sleeper will be James Cook. I know that this is not a run-first team. I already mentioned that once. But this was someone that averaged almost 6 yards per rush 1 season ago, would have led the league in yards per carry had he qualified. I think you need 100 touches or 100 rushes to get to that. He had 89. Showed that big play threat. And yes, he might lose some touchdowns in the red zone to Josh Allen, to Damian Harris, to Latavius Murray, who I didn't even mention when rattling off running backs earlier. But you're going to see an increase in the workload. And in addition to running the ball, he's someone that was coming out of the draft last year as the best pass-catching back in the draft class. So you're going to see him get a lot of those vacated receptions as well. I think he's going to be more heavily involved. I don't have his draft position now in terms of where he's at. At one point, I saw he was about running back 30, though. I really feel like there is running back 2 potential for James Cook, so he's my sleeper.
Ryan, I'm glad you mentioned that. I've been trying to tell Joe for a while now that people are sleeping on Gabe Davis. But he's not my pick. You both may know my pick, but my pick's Dalton Kincaid. I think Kincaid is going to have an elite season. We had heard from Bean and McDermott and some, whatever behind the scenes, draft room conversation. They thought he had the best hands in the entire NFL draft. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they would have taken Kincaid, even with other receivers on the board. They've seen what the Chiefs have been able to do with the Kelsey Mahomes hookup. And so I think they're going to, and we've already been hearing even Bills players buzzing about how, Kincaid looks like the real deal. So he's not going to be used as a prototypical tight end. He's basically going to be a glorified receiver from what I can tell. And as a result, I think the biggest thing, the reason why rookie tight ends don't succeed in their first year is because they don't have as many routes run. A lot of times they're blocking. That's not going to be, I think Kincaid's going to be out there for almost all of the passing downs, running a route and having the opportunity to be targeted. So I think it's not out of the question for him to get, it would be an elite season, but I would not be surprised if he gets over 100 targets this season. So I think what you have to figure out is who is the third, possibly second option in that offense. Could it be a blend of Cook, James Cook, Khalil Shakir, and Kincaid? I'm not sure if one will really emerge or not, but my bet is on Kincaid. So going over to the Dolphins, guys, who is your sleeper for them?
My sleeper for the Dolphins, it's tough. I'm going to end up going with, I'm going to go with Tua. I'm going to roll with Tua as the sleeper. It's a guy fantasy community seems to be down on. They're concerned with his injuries and the concussions. I lean to the side of, concussions were more so of a freak thing. I know he's been working on strengthening his neck, working on, how to fall within MMA and everything. So I think he's got potential to stay healthy this year. And if he does, he's going to end up being an elite quarterback for you.
Dolphins were actually the toughest team for me to come up with a sleeper for because, Tua, when healthy, was putting up great stats. So I like that choice. Obviously, Waddle and Hill don't qualify as sleepers. They're, top wide receivers. I don't trust the veteran backs. I still think Delvin Cook could be in play for this team, but if I have to pick someone, I'll go with the rookie Devin Achane. Speed for days. I don't know how quickly they're going to get him involved, but this is a team that, they're kind of a track team on offense. So if you want to get him involved, he is definitely a deep sleeper, but he would be my choice for this team.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan. This was definitely probably the most difficult team for me to figure out a sleeper because a lot of them are just established commodities. But I'm going to go with what Joe said. I'm going to go with Tua. I mean, Tua only played 13 games last year because of the injuries. If he plays a full season, he's going to be well over 4,000 yards. Like you said, speed for days in that offense. He doesn't even the yards after catch alone help him just accumulate yardage. So as long as he can stay healthy, I think he could be, a good option, definitely a QB1. But I think people are really concerned, and owners are not going to want to hitch their ride to Tua and then they lose their season because he can't stay on the field. So going over to the New York Jets, what's your guys' sleepers for them?
I'm going to go with wide receiver McCole Hardman, which could be a surprise. I think that, he ended up deciding to go to the Jets because they said they have a defined role with him. They've got some other guys on the outside of the team. I feel like they still need somebody for that kind of slot role and the speed, and he's got that. And I think, Rodgers could find him deep down the field, and I think he could be utilized more as just kind of the gadget guy that Kansas City previously used him as.
No, I like that. And, I was at one point I was leaning like an Alan Lazard, someone that has a lot of chemistry already with Rodgers, knows this offense. But I'm going to go to tight end. I'm going to go with Tyler Conklin. Conklin is someone that had 87 targets a year ago with bad quarterback play, still put up over 550 yards, 3 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers does work the ball to his tight ends. Robert Tonyan had some respectable seasons the last few years in Green Bay. I can obviously see Conklin getting his fair share of targets there. I know they have CJ Uzomah and they have some other tight ends there, but I really think Conklin's going to establish himself as that top guy, be able to play a full season there. So in terms of sleepers, someone you can get late in a draft, I think Tyler Conklin is worth the risk in terms of maybe having him on your bench as a tight end 2 and potentially playing at that tight end 1 rate.
So I think for me, where my sleeper is going to go is I'm trying to figure out who's the second option in that offense. I think Garrett Wilson, far and away, will be the number 1 option, but who's the second? I was surprised by you saying Hardman, Joe. I thought for sure you're going to say your boy Alan Lazard. But I'm going to go with, which could be a surprise, I'm going to go with Corey Davis. He only played 13 games last year. He had 64 targets, which was 3rd on the team behind Garrett Wilson and Tyler Conklin. Elijah Moore is gone from that team. So you're talking about 65 targets becoming available right then there alone. So, I mean, Corey Davis is a former first-round talent receiver. And you think about the time that he was in Tennessee and even his initial year with the Jets, he hasn't had a great quarterback to work with. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback he's had to work with by far. And I would have thought the Jets were going to move off from him. There was more and more talk about it. I thought that he would even possibly get traded because it seemed like there was too much in that wide receiver room. I thought Davis was going to be on the move. They decided not to cut him. They could have cut him and saved some cap space. They could have traded him. They didn't trade him. So to me, I think they must have some sort of game plan for him. I think Lazard is more of like, okay, the Rodgers fan club. Let me bring all the guys that I like to play with and have them come to New York. So I think Davis is a deep sleeper. I think he's worth a dart throw in the event he could be good. So how about the Patriots, guys? Who is your sleeper for the Patriots?
Yeah, sleeper I like for the Patriots. I like wide receiver Tyquan Thornton as a sleeper. They've got Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster. Thornton's a guy you kind of saw emerge at the end of last year. I think he's got elite speed. And I think Bill O'Brien will figure out a way to get him more involved in the offense and help that offense be a little more explosive this year.
Yeah, that's a solid choice. I'm going to go with Mac Jones, quarterback. We saw some flashes of him in his rookie year in terms of what he can do, moving the ball, anticipation, getting the ball to his receivers. I think Bill O'Brien's going to be a major upgrade for him. You can still question the weapons that they have, though. The fact that they probably should be a run-first team and really give Stevenson a heavy workload. But I could see him working with some of those receivers that he has on the team. Mike Gesicki, a new tight end that he has to kind of utilize. I'm going to go with Mac Jones kind of bouncing back and being a respectable QB2 in fantasy circles.
Yeah, so for me, my sleeper for the Patriots is Mike Gesicki. I think Gesicki, before this previous season, I think fantasy football owners thought that he was a tight end 1 player. Then the Dolphins just completely just faded him from the offense. He just wasn't a fit for what Mike McDaniel wanted to do, which I thought was kind of interesting because they franchise tagged him. Like, why franchise tag him, give him all that money, and then not use him? I mean, it was kind of a strange move by them, but nevertheless, teams make head-scratching decisions all the time. But now him going to the Patriots, I think he's motivated. I think he's going to be – he took a prove-it deal, so obviously he's going to want to cash out for next year. So I think he's really going to be motivated to do well. And we know that Belichick has used tight ends very well during his tenure as a head coach, and the Patriots are familiar with doing that. I think he'll supersede Hunter Henry as the number 1 tight end. Sounds like he does have some familiarity with Bill O'Brien. I think he could be a tight end 1 for sure. And his ADP is really, really far down. I'm targeting him as a tight end 2 option, as a flyer in almost every draft, because I think he could, last year he just wasn't used. And that's people looking at it like, oh, he must have just took a step back. He's not as good. That's where you have to look at what the data says, because the story can tell could be vastly different. All right, guys. So before we end it here, let's go with a bust. What do you guys have for a bust, fantasy bust? Just one player for the division. It could be a rapid fire. You don't have to do a huge explanation.
Well, you're not going to like it, Steve, but I'm going to say Dalton Kincaid.
Oh,
this guy, his ADP is just, right. And I know you're extremely high. The buzz is crazy on him right now. And my argument is still, rookie tight ends in their first year tend to disappoint in fantasy. So I'm just throwing the caution to the wind with him in his rookie season. I do like his prospects and ability, and I think maybe in his second year and beyond he becomes that better fantasy player that we're expecting.
No, I don't think there's anything unrealistic about that, because again, very few rookie tight ends come in and deliver right away. Now, if the Bills do utilize him in the slot, not just as a traditional tight end, he might be one of those cases that come right in and do put up those monster stats. For me, I'm going to go with Jets running back Breece Hall. You look at what he did pre-injury, and I think that's going to be in a lot of people's minds in terms of he looked really good. He was great as a rookie, but coming off of a serious injury, you never know what to expect, even when you're a younger player. So I think that they have some other bodies in that running back room that they can rotate, use, and utilize. And maybe by mid-year, he is looking like the Hall of pre-injury, and maybe he ends up being their true running back 1. But I'm a little hesitant when it comes to Breece Hall and replicating what he did when healthy last year.
Audience, don't listen to what Joe just said. Just tune out what he said. It's not worth listening to. But I actually am in agreement with you, Ryan. Breece Hall is my bust, and coming back from the ACL is a no good. I think it's going to take him a while to really get back into the fold of that offense. I think they're going to, in the early weeks, they're going to kind of spare his usage. The other thing I don't like is Jets are rumored as like the Dalvin Cook team. I don't like all the speculation. Like if Dalvin Cook comes there, his value, at least for this year, is completely tanked. His dynasty value is still intact, but they got Michael Carter. They like Zonovan Knight. They drafted Israel Abakanda. Like, I don't know what's going on. Everything indicates that they're not going to give him a huge workload. And if they're not going to give him a huge workload, that concerns me greatly. So for where people are drafting him, I know there's a lot of excitement around him. I think he's a pass.
Yeah, throw in Aaron Rodgers. You're going to be a pass-first team, I would hope, if you're the Jets with Rodgers in the fold. So that also takes away probably some of those carries that a year ago the backs were getting because they didn't want Zach Wilson and they didn't want Mike White throwing the ball 30, 40 times if possible. So they're leaning on that run game at times. So with Rodgers, you might be a balanced offense, but you're definitely still leaning a little bit more to the being pass first, I would think.
Yeah, that's a great call, and I could definitely see Michael Carter being used more in those pass downs. It's a PPR option as well, so that is very interesting. But that concludes our show breaking down the AFC East division for the upcoming NFL season. Before we sign off, Ryan, thanks so much for coming on the show. Where can others find your great work?
Yeah, you can find my work at nyup.com and syracuse.com. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan Talbot Bills and just about every social media platform at Ryan Talbot Bills now, since there's a lot of uncertainty about Twitter. And you can find the Shout Buffalo Football podcast on all your major podcast platforms. But we also go live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You can watch the video live as well.
Wings Up, correct? You're going to be in London this year? Is that what I was hearing?
Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned Wings though too. Wing Nuts for live shows once a month up in Buffalo, but then in October, Matt and I will be in London doing a live show from the Bills Backers Bar. Looking forward to that one. Going to be a fun week over there covering a game, and that game itself is going to be really interesting in terms of, do the Jaguars have an advantage being there a week ahead of time, or are they ready to go home and packing it in by that second game? So that's going to be an interesting conversation and dynamic to discuss leading up to that game, but really looking forward to obviously, heading somewhere that's not usually on the schedule on a yearly basis.
You definitely want to check out Winged Nuts and all the great stuff that Ryan is doing. If you enjoyed this video, we are a new channel, so we ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also comment below on who you think will win the AFC East and any wildcard teams coming out of the AFC East. You can also follow us on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Thank you so much for watching. On our next episode, we'll be doing the AFC North breakdown and the rest of the divisions. You're not going to want to miss that. And until next time.